The night in New Delhi was shrouded in thick darkness, pierced only by the distant glow of streetlights. In a maximum security prison, where the darkness felt even deeper, Maya was ready for her escape. The narrow corridors of the prison echoed with the guards' footsteps, but Maya knew exactly when and where each of them would be. Her heart pounded, but her determination was even stronger. Maya had spent months planning every detail, every move. The cells were silent, as if the other prisoners sensed that something extraordinary was about to happen. With an almost supernatural skill, Maya used a small tool she had smuggled in to unlock her cell. The sound of metal against metal was muffled, but any noise could attract unwanted attention. As she left the cell, Maya glided through the shadows like a specter. She had memorized the guards' routines and the blind spots of the security cameras. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. She knew there was no room for error. Stories of prisoners who were caught and brutally punished for attempting to escape haunted her memories, but this only motivated her to keep going. The night air was cold and carried a faint smell of burning, a constant reminder of the nearby slum fires. Maya finally reached the last barrier between her and freedom, the prison's outer wall. With trembling but steady hands, she threw the improvised rope over the wall. Climbing was a test of her strength and determination, each pull bringing her closer to freedom. When her feet touched the ground on the other side, Maya felt a rush of adrenaline. She was free. But New Delhi, with its labyrinthine streets and dark alleys, offered no warm welcome. The city, now a vast and unfamiliar maze, awaited her with its own hidden threats. Maya's first step into freedom was into the night, a night promising secrets and dangers beyond imagination. The escape was just the beginning. Maya's true battle, against both human and supernatural forces, was about to begin. Maya moved quickly but cautiously through the narrow, deserted streets of New Delhi. The city, usually vibrant and noisy, was eerily silent that night. Only the distant sound of stray dogs and the occasional human shout broke the silence. She pulled the hood of her jacket over her face, trying to blend in with the shadows dancing on the walls of the old buildings. The darkness seemed alive, as if the city was watching her every move. The streets were filled with old stories, whispers of urban legends intertwining with reality. Every corner Maya turned, every alley she walked through, carried a sense of distrust and imminent danger. As she progressed, Maya felt the presence of invisible eyes on her, a sense of being followed that made her heart race. She knew that besides the guards who might be searching for her, there were other, more sinister and inexplicable forces seemingly drawn to her escape. Hooded figures appeared on the edge of her vision, only to vanish when she tried to focus on them. The old neighborhood she found herself in was a maze of narrow alleys and secret passages, some as old as the city itself. Moss-covered walls and creaking wooden doors told stories of times past, of mysteries that might never be fully revealed. Maya felt a chill down her spine as she passed an abandoned temple, its doors partially open like a sinister invitation. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning quickly, she saw no one, but the feeling of being watched remained. With each step, each sound, the tension grew. She knew she needed to find a safe place to hide, to regroup and plan her next moves. Maya entered a narrow alley, the walls so close she could almost touch both sides with outstretched arms. The darkness here was almost tangible, and the air was heavy with the smell of burning incense and something else, something she couldn't identify. When she finally found a small, slightly open door, she slipped inside, closing it silently behind her. Inside the small room, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, her senses still on high alert. She knew the night was far from over, and the dangers the city hid were just beginning to reveal themselves. The room where Maya had taken refuge was a small, cramped space, filled with dust and shadows. The only light came from a lit candle, casting a faint glow on a figure sitting in a corner, almost invisible in the dimness. Maya instinctively stepped back, her heart racing again. But before she could decide whether to flee or fight, the figure spoke. "You are Maya, aren't you?" The voice was soft, almost hypnotic, but carried a weight of wisdom and mystery. "Who are you?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The figure moved into the light, revealing an elderly man with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through her. He was dressed in traditional Indian clothes, and around his neck hung an ancient amulet, carved with symbols Maya didn't recognize. "My name doesn't matter, but my message does." He stood up slowly, his movements deliberate. "There are forces in this city that you don't understand, Maya. Forces that were awakened by your escape." Maya frowned, confused and uneasy. "What are you talking about?" "There are old stories, legends about demons and spirits that inhabit the shadows of New Delhi. When you escaped, you broke not only physical chains but also spiritual ones. They know who you are, and they are coming for you." Maya's disbelief was evident. "You expect me to believe this? Demons and spirits?" The man smiled, a sad and understanding smile. "Whether you believe it or not doesn't change the fact that they are here. And you need to be prepared." He handed Maya the amulet he was wearing. "This may offer some protection, but it's not infallible. You must find the Temple of the Seven Gates, a place forgotten by time but still powerful. There, you will find answers and perhaps a way to stop what is coming." Before Maya could ask more questions, the man extinguished the candle, plunging the room into darkness. When she lit her lighter to see better, he had disappeared, as if he had never been there. All that remained was the amulet in her hand, glowing with a faint and strangely comforting light. With the amulet now hanging around her neck, Maya left the room, feeling even more vulnerable but also with a new sense of determination. The streets of New Delhi awaited her, and now, besides the physical dangers, she was aware of the supernatural threats that might lurk in every shadow. Maya knew she had to find the Temple of the Seven Gates before it was too late. Maya navigated the winding streets of New Delhi, guided only by intuition and the weight of the amulet around her neck. She needed to find a safe place, a refuge where she could hide and try to understand the old man's cryptic words. Her legs carried her to the old quarter, a part of the city that seemed frozen in time, full of centuries-old buildings and narrow alleys. The old quarter had a peculiar atmosphere, almost as if it were alive. The stone and wooden structures, adorned with intricate details, told stories of past generations. Maya moved stealthily through the shadows, always alert to the sounds around her. The few people who crossed her path seemed oblivious to her presence, immersed in their own nighttime routines. She found shelter in a small inn, an old building that seemed forgotten by modernity. The owner, an elderly man with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the world, asked no questions. He simply nodded and handed her a key, indicating a room on the second floor. The room was simple but offered what Maya needed most, anonymity and security. She locked the door behind her and sat on the bed, trying to process everything that had happened. The amulet around her neck seemed to pulse with its own energy, a constant reminder of the old man's words. She knew she needed to rest, but her mind was full of unanswered questions. As the night wore on, Maya began to hear strange noises coming from outside the window. Peeking through the curtains, she saw vague shapes moving in the shadows, figures that seemed to be watching the inn with sinister intent. Her heart raced, and she backed away, trying to stay out of sight. The old man's words echoed in her mind, "They are coming for you." Determined to understand what was happening, Maya decided to explore the old quarter the next morning. She needed to find the Temple of the Seven Gates and discover what it meant for her journey. As the high moon faintly illuminated the city, Maya finally gave in to exhaustion, her eyes slowly closing. But the rest was brief. In the middle of the night, a piercing sound woke her. It was a scream, distant but filled with deep terror. Maya quickly got up, her heart pounding in her chest. The night was far from peaceful, and the threats she faced were both flesh and blood and supernatural. She knew that from that moment on, every move needed to be calculated, every decision could mean the difference between life and death. The old quarter of New Delhi, with its legends and mysteries, had become an invisible battlefield, and Maya was at its center. She needed to gather strength and courage to face the challenges ahead, knowing that dawn would bring not only answers but also new dangers. Maya woke up at dawn, but the feeling of unease lingered. The old quarter looked different in the daylight, yet the atmosphere of mystery remained. Determined to move forward, she left the inn and began exploring the narrow, winding alleys. Each corner revealed a new layer of the city's history, but also brought an increasing sense of being watched. As night approached once again, Maya found herself in a dead-end alley, surrounded by high, moss-covered walls. It was dark and quiet, except for a sound she couldn't immediately identify. It was a whisper, almost inaudible, but unmistakable. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she tried to locate the source of the sound. The whispers seemed to come from all directions, as if the walls around her were speaking to her. Words in an ancient language she didn't understand, but that conveyed a sense of urgency and danger. Maya felt her heart race, each beat echoing in her ears. She moved slowly through the alley, eyes alert for any movement. Suddenly, a hooded figure appeared at the entrance of the alley. Maya froze, her instinct telling her to run, but her legs wouldn't respond. The figure advanced, the whispers intensifying around her. "You shouldn't be here," the figure's voice was low and rough, almost like a growl. Maya backed up, but her back met the wall behind her. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it raised its hand, revealing a burned symbol on its palm, the same symbol as the amulet Maya wore. "You are in an ancient place, full of secrets that should not be revealed." Maya felt a wave of panic. "The Temple of the Seven Gates. Where is it?" The figure laughed, a cold and joyless sound. "You think finding the temple will solve your problems? There are things older and more dangerous than you can imagine. They know you are here. And they are coming to take you back." Before Maya could react, the figure dissolved into shadows, leaving her alone in the alley. The whispers, however, didn't disappear. They intensified, as if they were inside her own mind, each word a sharp knife cutting into her sanity. Desperate, Maya ran out of the alley, the whispers following her like a sinister echo. She needed to find the temple, but now she understood that the path would be filled with obstacles, both visible and invisible. The darkness was closing in around her, and Maya knew she had to be faster, smarter, and braver than she had ever been. She ran through the streets of New Delhi, the whispers turning into a cacophony of ancient voices, each telling a story of terror and despair. Maya knew she was being pulled into a world where the real and the supernatural met, and her survival depended on unraveling the secrets the city so fiercely guarded. The sky was heavy with dark clouds as Maya ventured deeper into the labyrinthine alleys of New Delhi, her destination uncertain and her mind troubled by the whispers that followed her. The city seemed to be breathing with its own rhythm, every shadow and every silence intensifying the feeling that something was about to happen. As she headed towards an old abandoned market, the atmosphere around her changed. The air grew colder, and a strange mist began to rise, enveloping the buildings and streets in a ghostly shroud. Maya's eyes slowly adjusted to the dim light, and she started to notice movements in the shadows. Then, as if the city itself were revealing them, figures began to appear. They were hooded entities, their faces hidden deep within their dark hoods. Their movements were fluid and sinister, as if they were floating rather than walking. Each one emanated an aura of malevolence, and their eyes, if they had eyes, glowed with a supernatural red light that pierced the darkness. Maya tried to hide in a dark corner, but the figures seemed to know exactly where she was. They approached, their voices murmuring in an ancient and icy language. As they drew nearer, the air around Maya grew increasingly dense, and she felt a crushing weight on her shoulders. The leader of the figures stepped forward, his presence almost physically oppressive. He extended his hand, and from his palm emanated a black light that distorted the space around it. The leader spoke with a voice that seemed to echo from within a cave, laden with terrible and innate power. "You should not have come here, Maya. This place belongs to the ancients. Your presence here has disrupted the order we established." Maya felt a wave of panic, her thoughts racing. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, her voice trembling. "You broke the rules," the leader continued, his voice almost a growl. "And now, you must pay the price. The Temple of the Seven Gates is not just a place. It is a prison. And you are about to release what was imprisoned." As the figures moved closer around her, Maya tried to react. She stood up and ran, but the labyrinth of shadows seemed to close in on her. Every corner led to a new level of terror, and the demonic figures followed, their murmurs growing into a chorus of threats. She found a small altar in the middle of the market, an ancient relic covered with protective symbols. Instinctively, Maya grabbed a piece of stone from the altar and used it as an improvised weapon, striking at the approaching figures. The figures, though seemingly made of shadows, reacted to her resistance with even greater intensity. Every strike and every attempt to escape seemed futile, as if the city itself were conspiring against her. Maya was being pushed to her limits, forced to confront terror that was both physical and spiritual. She knew that if she didn't find a way out quickly, the demonic figures would eventually capture her and seal her fate in eternal darkness. The figures' red eyes still glowed in the darkness, promising that the struggle was far from over and that the real terror was yet to come. Maya, now completely exhausted and terrified, managed to take refuge in a small abandoned house in the heart of the old district. The darkness was even denser there, and the air carried a scent of mold and decay. She leaned against the cold wall, trying to catch her breath and clear her thoughts. The amulet she carried seemed to pulse with a disturbing energy, and the demonic figures still haunted her mind. As she tried to gather herself, Maya noticed a small altar in the house, adorned with extinguished candles and old scrolls. Curious and desperate, she began to examine the scrolls, hoping to find some clue on how to deal with the figures that pursued her. However, what she found was far more revealing than she had expected. One of the scrolls was partially disintegrated, but still legible enough to tell an ancient and disturbing story. The words were about a young woman who, centuries ago, had been accused of witchcraft and condemned to a spiritual prison for practicing dark magic. What Maya read left her breathless. The woman was not just any witch, but someone who had tried to destroy the gates of the temple, causing the imprisoned demons to threaten the world. The face of the woman in the image that accompanied the text was identical to Maya's. The shock was almost physical. How was this possible? Maya remembered the old man's words about the spiritual forces and the Temple of the Seven Gates, but she had never imagined her own story was intertwined with these legends. As the details of the story unfolded, Maya discovered that the young woman had been captured and sealed within a magical sarcophagus, along with the demons she had released. The ritual had been performed to ensure that the evil energy did not escape. But now, with Maya's escape, the balance had been disturbed. Terror gripped Maya as she realized she was the reincarnation of that woman, doomed to repeat the same mistakes and face the same consequences. Maya's dark past was not just a legacy of pain, but a real and present threat. Her very essence seemed to be tied to the evil forces she was trying to escape. Feeling the weight of the revelation, Maya almost collapsed. She understood that her actions were not just about survival but about preventing the imprisoned demons from being released again. The Temple of the Seven Gates, to which she had been guided, was the key to sealing the evil forever. Desperate and determined, Maya realized she had to face not only the demonic figures pursuing her but also the ghosts of her own past. The path to the temple was not just a physical one but a journey to confront her own essence and the legacy she carried. The weight of her discovery was overwhelming, and the future seemed more uncertain than ever. But Maya knew that now more than ever, she needed to find a way to reconcile her past and stop the darkness from spreading, to ensure that history did not repeat itself and the demons were not released again. Night had fallen once again over New Delhi, and the sky was covered with a thick layer of dark clouds. Maya walked with quick, determined steps toward what she hoped was the Temple of the Seven Gates. Her thoughts were in turmoil, her mind full of images of the demonic figures and the revelations about her past. The only thing that kept her moving forward was the certainty that she needed to perform a ritual to prevent the demons from being unleashed. The path led her to an even darker area of the city, where the buildings were in ruins and the vegetation grew uncontrollably. After a long and tiring journey, Maya found an ancient temple hidden among the trees and ruins. It was an imposing structure, with symbols and figures carved into its walls, covered in dust and cobwebs. The temple seemed to have been forgotten by time, but its aura was palpable. Maya entered, and the darkness inside was almost total. She lit a lantern, revealing a vast hall with carved pillars and an altar in the center. The altar was covered with an intricate tapestry of symbols and ancient rituals. Maya knew this was the place where the ritual needed to be performed. But, as she had read, the ritual required sacrifices and invocations that had to be done precisely at midnight. She prepared the space with what she had found: candles, incense, and ingredients she had gathered along her journey. With each step, she felt the weight of the old man's words, the responsibility to confront the darkness she herself had awakened. Time was running out, and midnight was approaching quickly. As the hour approached, the temple began to vibrate with a cold, sinister energy. Maya felt a growing presence, as if the temple itself was reacting to her preparation. The shadows on the walls began to move, and a sense of oppression enveloped the environment. When the clock struck midnight, Maya began the ritual. She lit the candles and started to chant the invocation words she had studied. Each word seemed to cut through the heavy air, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. The tension was palpable. The candlelight cast long shadows that writhed and stretched, as if trying to escape the power of the ritual. Suddenly, a deafening sound filled the temple. The demonic figures Maya had faced earlier appeared around the altar, their red eyes glowing with a primordial fury. They moved slowly, as if made of pure despair and rage. Maya realized these entities were trying to disrupt the ritual, to stop her from completing the task she had begun. With her heart pounding, Maya did not hesitate. She continued to chant the words, her voice stronger and firmer than ever. The altar began to glow with an intense light, and an invisible force seemed to fight against the evil entities, keeping them at bay. The battle between light and darkness was in full swing, and Maya was at the center of this primordial conflict. As the ritual progressed, the light on the altar became increasingly intense. The energy emanating from it seemed to repel the demonic figures, forcing them to retreat into the shadows. The atmosphere was charged with an almost unbearable tension, and Maya felt as if she was fighting against something far beyond her physical and emotional capabilities. Finally, with one last cry of power and determination, Maya completed the ritual. The light burst into a blinding glow, and the demonic figures disintegrated into a cloud of black smoke. The temple fell silent, and the pressure she had felt during the ritual began to diminish. Maya collapsed to the floor, exhausted and gasping for breath. She knew she had done her part, but the journey was far from over. The city was saved, but the cost of this victory was still uncertain. She needed to recover and prepare for what was to come next, because the fight against evil was far from over. The temple was almost completely silent, the light that had emerged from the altar now dissipating into a soft, soothing aura. Maya, still kneeling on the ground, felt a deep exhaustion, as if all her strength had been drained by the ritual. However, even amidst her fatigue, she knew the true test was yet to come. There was a palpable sense that something, or someone, was still waiting in the depths of the shadows. As she tried to catch her breath, Maya heard a growing sound coming from the back of the temple. It was a deep, resonant noise, as if the very structure was emitting a cry of agony. The walls began to tremble slightly, and a thick mist formed around the altar. The air was heavy with a sense of anticipation and impending terror. Suddenly, a colossal and sinister form emerged from the shadows. It was the Guardian of the Gates, an entity of immense proportions and terrifying appearance. Its body was a mass of shadows and flesh, with eyes glowing like embers and an aura of malevolence that seemed to compress the space around it. It held a scepter adorned with skulls and ancient runes. The Guardian advanced slowly towards Maya, each step reverberating like thunder. It raised the scepter, and a wave of dark energy spread through the temple, corrupting the light and plunging the space into an even deeper darkness. The temple seemed to transform into a supernatural battlefield, with the Guardian as the judge and executioner. Do you dare challenge the balance that has been maintained for millennia? The Guardian's voice was a mixture of screams and whispers, each word carrying immense weight. Maya struggled to her feet, her determination renewed by the need to face this final challenge. I came to seal the evil, not to create more chaos. This temple belongs to the light, not the darkness. The Guardian laughed, a sound that seemed to echo from all directions. You do not understand what is at stake. The Temple of the Seven Gates is a veil between worlds. Breaking this veil can unleash forces beyond your comprehension. With a cry of determination, Maya charged at the Guardian, fighting against the pressure of the dark energy spreading through the temple. She used the amulet still hanging around her neck as a focal point of power. The light of the amulet began to shine intensely, forming a shield against the darkness surrounding her. The Guardian attacked with its scepter, the dark energy transforming into a wave of destruction. Maya dodged and counterattacked, channeling the light from the amulet to repel the attack. The battle was fierce and brutal, each move a struggle to maintain the balance between good and evil. The Guardian was a formidable opponent, and each blow Maya struck seemed to only enrage it further. As the fight continued, Maya realized the Guardian was not just a brute force entity, but also a keeper of profound arcane knowledge. Its attacks were calculated, as if trying to dismantle the very essence of the light Maya was trying to protect. However, her determination and the strength of the amulet began to take effect. Finally, Maya found an opening. With a cry of strength and courage, she channeled all the amulet's energy into a concentrated attack. The light burst into a blinding explosion, enveloping the Guardian in an intense glow. The Guardian screamed in a mix of rage and agony, and the entire temple seemed to shake with the intensity of the light. When the light finally subsided, the Guardian had vanished, leaving only a void in the center of the temple. The dark energy that had corrupted the space was also gone, and the temple returned to a state of calm. Maya, now exhausted and trembling, knelt on the ground. The battle was over, but the weight of responsibility and the struggle still lingered. She knew she had fulfilled her purpose, but the cost of her victory and the impact of her actions were still uncertain. The temple was at peace, but the scars of the battle were still fresh, and Maya prepared for what lay ahead, knowing the true challenge of her journey was yet to come. The silence that followed the battle with the guardian of the gates was profound and almost sacred. The temple was calm now, the soft light of the candles illuminating the space with a serenity that felt like a relief after the storm. Maya, still panting and exhausted, slowly rose from the ground. Each step she took seemed to echo with the weight of the struggles and revelations she had faced. With the calm restored in the temple, Maya approached the altar, where the glow of the amulet now seemed weaker but still pulsed with a comforting light. She leaned over the altar and examined the symbols and ancient inscriptions once more. Her mind was full of doubts and unanswered questions about her true role in this story and what it really meant to be the reincarnation of that woman from the past. Then something extraordinary happened. A soft, ethereal voice, not physical but seeming to float through the space, began to speak. Maya, you have faced the shadows, not just external but internal ones. What you seek is the truth about yourself. She looked around, trying to locate the source of the voice, but found no one. The voice continued, now with a gentler, more enlightening tone. You carry within you an ancient and profound power. The Temple of the Seven Gates not only guards the path to evil but also to the truth about what it really means to be a guardian. Maya, her mind reeling, asked, "What should I do now? What does all this mean for me?" The voice replied with surprising clarity, "You are not merely a victim of circumstances. Your true mission is to maintain balance, not only between good and evil but within yourself. The battle you fought was a journey to accept and understand yourself. The amulet you carry is more than a tool, it is a symbol of the light and shadow that coexist within you." As the words resonated, Maya began to see visions of the internal battles she had fought, the doubts and fears that had shaped her actions. The amulet around her neck began to shine with a soft, warm light, reflecting the new understanding she was gaining. With a growing sense of clarity, Maya realized that her struggle had not just been against malevolent entities but against her own fears and insecurities. She was the key to balancing these forces, not just in the external world but within herself. As the voice concluded, the sense of presence dissipated, leaving Maya in a deep state of reflection. The temple, which had been the scene of so much pain and conflict, now felt like a place of peace and understanding. Maya stood up and walked toward the exit, the amulet now glowing with a steady, serene light. When she finally crossed the threshold of the temple, she felt a new sense of purpose. The battle was won, but the journey was far from over. Maya understood that the true mission was to continue the balance within herself and in the world around her. The temple and its mysteries had been an essential step, but the path to true peace and understanding still lay ahead. The city of New Delhi continued to pulse with its life and stories, and Maya knew that her actions had left an indelible mark. With a lighter heart and a clearer mind, she prepared to move forward, embracing both the light and the shadows that were part of her being. Maya's true journey was just beginning.